Hi, I'm Barry Gordon.
And I'm Andre Coleman.
And this is NewsRap live at 5, and here's what's happening.
You know, this country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all. And it's not happening for all right now.
Colin Kaepernick is once again the center of controversy following his selection as the face of Nike's 30th anniversary Just Do It campaign. People are protesting the move by Nike by burning their Nike apparel and boycotting Nike products. The current deal with Nike has also brought criticism from activists who say that the original purpose of taking a knee has been co-opted by a broader diversity agenda, which draws attention away from the ongoing plight of young black men being targeted and murdered by law enforcement. Kaepernick is most known for taking a knee during the national anthem before NFL games, protesting the killings. Assemblyman Chris Holden was in Pasadena and stopped by our studios for an interview with Hoyt Hillsman. Among the topics discussed were the growing problem of rising housing costs in Pasadena and homelessness.
It's very disheartening because I think what we're really looking at, much like we did back in the 60s, is the issue of poverty and wealth disparity and how to bridge that gap. Part of the challenge is California is just becoming a very unaffordable place to live.
The City Council is currently reviewing its in lieu fee policy designed to combat rising prices and facilitate the creation of low-income housing. Impact Pasadena with Hoyt Hillsman can be seen on the Arroyo Channel Thursdays at 6 p.m. The city of Pasadena is accepting applicants for the chief of police following the retirement of former Chief Philip Sanchez. 3 community forums were scheduled at local parks to gather community input to try to find out what the qualities potential candidates for the police chief should have. Community members are encouraged to visit cityofpasadena.net/police chief recruitment to offer their input. SB 10, the California Senate bill aimed at cash bail reform, was signed by Governor Jerry Brown and takes effect on October 1, 2019. Advocates of the new law say that this bill will repair the exploitative cash bail system, while opponents say it simply exchanges the corrupt bail system with an equally destructive algorithm. California is the first state in the U.S. to fully abolish the cash bail system.
All right, now something else is happening,
That's
and
right.
we didn't get a chance to get any B-roll on it, but Gray, fill us in, because it just happened before we came on the air.
About an hour and a half ago, maybe two hours ago, I learned that former Pasadena Police Lieutenant Vaskin Gordikian will plead guilty to 2 felonies.
Oh.
So one felony of selling illegal weapons and another one of making a false statement to government officials. His attorneys are asking for 30 months in exchange for his guilty plea. Now,
Yeah, give us a little backstory in case people aren't following the
Vaskin was a
Gordikian
rising
story.
star in the Pasadena Police Department. He worked really close with the command staff, particularly former Chief Sanchez. At some point, 2014, 2015, he began selling weapons illegally on cowguns.net.
He was the public information officer?
Public information officer. Now that's a site for gun enthusiasts. They discuss the efforts, the Second Amendment, but there's also a form on there for them to sell guns. He was selling off-roster weapons, which means that civilians can't buy these weapons, but police officers can. And he was using waivers to get by the 10-day waiting period to get these weapons.
So selling them on the net, does that mean that only police officers could buy them on the net, or anyone could buy them on the net, right?
No. Only police officers can buy these weapons. Now, police officers can sell them to civilians if they sell them with a federal firearms license. According to prosecutors, he did not have one.
Oh.
So that's where he runs into trouble. Now, this is a non-binding agreement, which means that the judge hasn't accepted it. So he could walk into court on September 20th and with the intent to plead guilty, and the judge can go, it's not enough time, at which point his lawyers would yank that agreement back and he would go to trial, and he's facing 15 years instead of 30 months.
Okay.
Now, 30 months.
That's a pretty sweet deal. I mean,
Yeah.
he must have cooperated with Mueller or something. I don't know how he got that deal.
Yeah, especially for that.
Yeah,
So,
15 years to 30 months.
Yeah.
That's
they may as well, that's like getting 14 days, right?
that's well, that's what Papadopoulos
got 14 days.
Except they said that it had nothing to do with cooperation, and we still don't know whether he's really cooperated, because they said that this judge is just kind of a softie. And,
Yeah, and the judge felt like that he did show some remorse for what he had done, and the judge felt like didn't necessarily really agree that he went out of his way to try to interfere with the investigation. My point is...
Were you at the Gordikian hearing?
I was at there was not a hearing today, but I was at the Gordikian hearing when his indictment was announced.
Did he show remorse?
He didn't speak.
Okay.
at that point. Originally, he had Mark Garagos, but he doesn't have Mark Garagos anymore. At some point, he got a new attorney. So, but this, this is one of those things, Barry. This may not be a victimless crime like his attorney is claiming. We're talking about 108 weapons.
Yeah.
So we don't know
Where are
where
they gonna
all
end
of
up?
those weapons are. Who are they going to end up with?
That's right.
At some point, most likely, one of them will be used, since it was purchased illegally, it will be used illegally.
By a police officer.
He sold to civilians.
Oh, he did sell to
Yeah,
civilians.
so we don't know who
That's
has
what
it.
I was, okay. that
We
was
don't know
what I was
who
asking.
has it. So.
Okay. Well, this is a call-in show, folks, and it feeds off of your participation, naturally. So come join the conversation. The number is 626-794-8585.
That's right.
And, I mean, you know what I want to talk about, obviously.
Bring it.
You know,
Let's
the
go.
story of the century, which just keeps going and going and going. And you mentioned Papadopoulos. So now we have this New York Times op-ed, right?
That's right.
And
I knew
as
you were
a-
going to bring that up, too.
Yeah, because as a journalist, I have to ask you, first of all, was the Times right to print it without a name on it? That's my first question.
You want me to answer now?
Sure.
If the author of the story faces danger politically, financially, or physically, then they are ethically, they're well within their rights, and legally, they should print it without a name. Now, people keep calling this an anonymous story. It's not anonymous.
No,
Anonymous.
actually, it's a momentousness.
Yeah, as
It's
we
a
saw
momentousness.
2 times last
Yeah,
night.
right.
No.
Yeah, Trump couldn't pronounce it. A momentousness is an
momentousness,
ominous
yeah.
story. Yeah.
But anonymous means I get a letter.
I
that's-
still think he drinks. I'm sorry. I know he says he
Hey.
doesn't drink. I think he
Dude,
drinks.
if Mueller was after me and my wife was wearing jackets saying, "Do you care?" I'd be drinking too if I was somebody now. Think about it.
I know.
It looks like we have a call.
We have a caller, Dan. Hey, Dan. Welcome to NewsRap. I'm not hearing you.
Yo, Dan.
They got to plug you into us.
All right. So hopefully they'll get
All
into
right,
us
call
soon.
back and let's get our system working so that we can hear from Dan.
So I'd be
Yeah.
drinking by now too. Hello?
Well,
Hello.
there you are. Hey,
Very
Dan.
well.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Actually, I saw that it brought up memory seeing Mr. Holden there, Chris.
Yes.
Remember we created the one community think tank. Remember that?
I do remember that, and as a matter of fact, I butt dialed him today. I'm not exactly sure how it happened. All of a sudden I was calling Chris Holden, and I never was calling Chris Holden, and Chris picked up.
You guys had a
and we had a
conversation?
lovely little conversation,
good.
and so. Because he's a great guy, and I miss him. But yeah, I do remember one community. Thanks for reminding us.
Yeah, I'd like to see that make a comeback. That we did some great
Yeah.
stuff there. And my question is about actually worker cooperatives. I know that the timing's kind of off here, what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. The actual U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives
Yeah.
National Conference is happening in Los Angeles. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
And it's happening next weekend, and I'm going to be there covering it, and it's going to be great. I don't know if you guys know what worker cooperatives are?
Well, how does it differ from a labor union?
Well, what it is it's basically there's a lot of different types of cooperatives, but a worker cooperative is a democratically run business model where the workers are the owners, whether
Right.
it's
Wow.
Okay.
a store or a factory or
Yep.
some kind of business.
Yep.
And it's very popular in Europe, particularly Spain and Italy, but we're trying to bring more of that idea here to Los Angeles.
Great.
It's bigger in the Bay Area than it is here. So the national convention is going to be here at Trade Tech next weekend. I'm excited about that.
Okay. So it's at Trade Tech
What day?
next weekend, right? All weekend?
Friday, all weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay,
And
and-
the,
There's going to be like
All sorts
panels and things happening, and
exactly, going into the nuts and bolts about how to actually do it.
Wow.
As far as the business is concerned, but it's also a political model too, because it's a challenge to the traditional top-down type of business structure where you have a board of directors that make all the important decisions for everybody else, and the worker owners do that instead.
That's terrific. Dan, thanks for cluing us in on that. I appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.
Yes, have a great weekend. Call back.
All right.
Okay, guy.
So
That's interesting.
very interesting.
That's good stuff.
And I know, there are a couple newspapers that went up for sale and the employees bought them.
That's right.
So it is a model that has been done locally in my profession. But back to the article, like we were talking about.
Yes. So an unnamed source as opposed to an anonymous
Right.
source.
So
Anonymous, you'd say they wouldn't know who it was.
Anonymous is a letter slipped under the door of somebody who sends me something unsigned, and then the paper doesn't know who it is. And to be clear, I know a lot of people don't understand stories. You hear stuff about, I won't reveal my source.
Yeah.
Well, the reporter saying that has to tell his boss, and usually his publisher, who that source is.
Okay.
So people in the newsroom, at least 2 other people, usually know who that source is and that source exists.
And they said that there were a few people that knew.
Who knew. So it's an unnamed source.
Okay. Now,
So
the
yes,
next question
I
I
would
have
have printed
is-
it.
Okay.
Based on that question.
But the next question I have is that the person's been identified as a senior administration official.
I don't know what that is.
That's what I don't know. And what concerns me, I guess, because of the attack that the press is under right now.
Is if
What
they're wrong.
concerns me is if it turns out to be some low-level staffer, then I think the Times is going to get in major trouble because they're going to, it's like blowing it up out of all, it's like what Rachel Maddow
Well,
does sometimes
define
when
major
she
trouble.
talks about,
Define-
I've got this great,
Right, like Trump's taxes.
revelation, and then there's
Right.
never a revelation.
But define major trouble. Major trouble with who?
With the public.
Oh, they're going to take a hit on their reputation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. However, the what was that? Give me the phrase again. A senior
administration official. Because when I think of that, I think of a cabinet official. I think of a chief of
most
staff. I
likely.
would think of at least the deputy director level.
Most likely, that's something that's being. They have come up with a way. They had a meeting, and they said, "How are we going to identify this person?" And they created a phrase for this person that probably does not, and obviously doesn't exist in the White House. And that's where they run the risk of running into trouble.
Okay.
Now,
But let me ask another question.
go ahead.
Because I got you. You're a journalist. You know this stuff.
I know it, baby.
So,
I know it up and down.
all right. So let me ask this question. If it was a low-level staffer, do you think they still would have printed it? Because you see, I don't.
How low? Who are we talking about? Give me a name.
My point is, you wouldn't have a name because you wouldn't know who the heck this
If
person is.
it's not a person that I could personally identify as
Yeah.
having been in a meeting with the president to see these things, then I wouldn't print it because you always come back to how do you know this? How
Right.
would I be? Because
And that's why I think it's someone high up.
this is what it comes down to for every journalist in this country. If I go to court, how am I going to prove I'm telling the truth?
Yeah.
Even if I know it, how do I prove it? So I wouldn't print it at that point. So it's somebody high up.
Yeah, and if it's someone low down, you would think that the Times would say, look, we don't know you from Adam, but put your name on it.
Right. Write a letter to the editor.
And we'll print it or write a letter to the editor. My sense is
This is not that.
that
Barry.
this is not that.
This is
My
not
sense
that.
is this is someone pretty
I will tell
high
you
up.
how you
so
know
you
that-
said before we came on the air,
I will tell you.
you have a guess.
I will go to that right after I say this.
Okay.
This is how you know it's somebody high up. They have great information on this administration.
Yeah.
Without going to somebody low on the totem pole, so they don't need to do this. Okay. Woodward's book is dropping next week.
Exactly.
So you have a wealth of
already ordered
information
it.
there too. So who do I think it is?
Yes.
I will go with what I have thought since this happened. It's either Mike Pence's speechwriter or it's somebody working in conjunction with Mike Pence.
Okay.
Is what I would go
And
with.
that's what Omarosa thinks.
I'm not happy about agreeing with
I
Omarosa,
was
but
just hearing that on Chris Matthews as
I'll-
I was driving over.
I'll sit right there.
Yeah, that's what Omarosa
and it's not
thinks.
Lodestar that-
In fact, she named the person, which is Nick Ayers.
Yeah.
She thinks it's Nick Ayers.
And it's not Lodestar that takes me there. It's the other word, amoral.
And because of that word,
Christian conservative,
maybe.
somebody who lives by
Or
a group of standards.
Or Midwestern
Mike Pence.
moral
but
guy.
moral is where you stick.
Dan Coates.
Could be. Could be.
Dan Coates.
Could be.
Now, this isn't my
But-
original idea.
Well, hang on.
It was
Some people
one of
don't
my
know who
ideas.
Dan Coates is, so tell people
Dan
who that
Coates
is.
is the director of national intelligence.
Okay.
Whoever this person was seemed to really know a lot about national security. Now, part of this argument is not all mine. I'm repeating a little bit of what Lawrence O'Donnell said, so I'm going to give him some props for saying it. But the fact is that the person knows national security. The person seems to think like a politician, low taxes, deregulation, all of the campaigning kind of stuff that the person said. And yes, he denied that he wrote it. So did Mark Felt, who was the deputy director of the FBI and turned out to be deep-throated.
Then I'm going to give you...
He denied that he was deep-throated.
And after you're done, I'm going to tell you probably what has happened here.
Okay, so my feeling is he has been caught flat-footed so many times. We saw him literally be shocked by something that happened while he was talking to Andrea Mitchell. So he's also 75 years old. And I felt that that article had a tremendous amount of gravitas. It didn't feel like a younger
And somebody that
person
age
to
would be
me.
used to seeing things run a certain way.
And he has nothing to lose.
And they have nothing to lose. Now, I'm going to tell you what's probably really happened here, which allows all of these people to say they didn't do it. There's probably a strong chance that it's 2 or 3 people who got together and drafted this.
That could be too.
Which is why it sounds like more than one person.
That could be too.
And then they probably had a speechwriter that they trusted, drafted up. And the Times said that they did not deal with that one senior staff official. It was an intermediate that they dealt with.
Right.
So they know who it was, but whoever it was did not feel comfortable probably either walking into the office or mailing it or emailing it or delivering it.
So who was the intermediate? That's the question.
Well, that would be the question.
That would be the
Who
question.
would be the intermediate? So Trump is raging.
I know. So you do not think they would have printed it unless it's someone pretty high up the food chain?
They have it. Before you go here against any White House, you know you have it. Even against Pasadena City Hall. It's like when I wrote, I was the first person to print Gordikian's name after this happened. Star News was doing a lot of a Pasadena police officer, you know, his home was raided by the ATF, but I had his name. I figured out who it was, and I triple checked and quadruple checked, and I came to the point where I said to my boss, I have it. I know I have it, and I can prove it. And I laid it all out, and he said, we go. That's what they did. They said, we have it, this is who it is, and they went to the editor and the publisher in this case, and maybe even the owner, and they went, oh, you got it. We go with it right now. And you go. You release an excerpt like they did, and then you go the next day. When you have it, you have it.
Exactly.
And they go with it.
Exactly. Now, this was not a news story.
No. Well,
so
it became
the
a news
standards
story.
are a little bit different, right? Because actually the news department has no idea who it is at the New York Times.
They probably don't.
Yeah.
They probably don't. Some of them might at this point. But it's become a news story because now they have to report on their reporting to say that they back up and they stand by their reporting. And no paper ever wants to become the story, and that's always the danger in something like this. Now they've become the story. The question is, will this person who spoke up unnamed ever do it again because of the fallout and the response
Exactly.
to it?
Exactly.
So somebody has something to say. I think Trump is going in the wrong direction trying to figure out who it is.
In what way?
Because once that person is discovered, let's say it is John Kelly, let's say it is Coates, you push them out, and everybody in the world is going to stick a mic in front of their face. And then how do their allies in the White House respond? Do you have a mass exodus behind that person?
Right.
If people feel like that person had a point. So they have to be careful on how they handle it. I'd kill it. I would just, hey, I can't respond to it. I don't know who said it. It's not true. We're moving on. And I wouldn't go back to it. That's what I would do to it.
Except he's not going to be able to kill it because the Woodward book is coming out on Tuesday.
Well, that's what I would use to kill this. But it says the same thing.
The scariest thing was the reaction of people on the Hill who basically said, I'm not surprised. There's nothing in this article that I don't already believe or know. That was Corker, that was Sass, that was Flake. All of them basically said, there's no shock here. Now, if there's no shock to a story about a president who conceivably, right, is so unhinged that they start to think about using the 25th Amendment to get him out.
And they considered it.
Then what is shock? Is there shock anymore? Because the fact is we are in, and we always use this term, I mean, the reporters and the op-ed people and me, and we all use this term constitutional crisis, but does anyone really know what a constitutional crisis is? And let's maybe talk about that for a moment, because Obama didn't use the term constitutional crisis, but he certainly made us feel that we were in one by the end of that speech. And the fact is that what it means is that this Constitution, this great thing, supposedly this infallible thing,
it's on fire,
that the founders put together over 200 years ago, is not working right now.
Yeah.
There are answers we don't have. First of all, let's look at one thing. It was the founders that gave us Trump. Why do I say that?
Well,
because if we had had a popular vote election,
he wouldn't have won.
Hillary won.
Right.
By 3 million votes. It was the founders that figured out this whole thing about the Electoral College.
To protect us.
To protect us.
From people like who?
People like us.
People like Trump.
People like, yes.
Because
from tyrants like Trump.
And
That's right.
Overly charismatic tyrants.
Right.
Who could capture the public's imagination but not be qualified to serve.
Right. And the fact is, he did capture the public's imagination, but not the majority of the public.
Exactly.
And so he did not win the popular vote. He's only there because of this weird thing with the Electoral College.
That did not function the way it was supposed to function.
No, because when it was put together, there were no political parties.
Right.
So it was a bunch of wise people, men, of course, at that time.
They thought
a bunch of wise men sitting in a room and saying, we're going to pick the best person for the job. And that's how Washington and Adams ran against each other, Adams and Jefferson. You always had these people that were at the very, very, top, most respected.
They were considered the best.
No one came out of nowhere.
Right. Well,
and just ran, and so the Electoral College is part of what gave Trump to us. And the other thing is that we never put anything in the Constitution that could address this problem. What do you do with a crazy person?
Right. The people cannot push forward and begin impeachment proceedings.
Right.
We have to wait for part of the Congress.
We can if with our governor.
Right. Oh, well, this is true.
We can with our governor. We have a recall vote.
But with our president.
He doesn't have to be crazy. We just can say we don't like him.
With our president, we cannot. And you were talking about that Obama speech a second ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what.
It was amazing. I'm going
to tell you what
find
struck me.
it, watch it. It's an hour, and it's worth an hour of your time.
I will tell you what.
It is phenomenal.
Dig this. This is what struck me. 1 minute into watching Barack Obama, 1 minute, it was better than every speech Trump has given since he's been in office. That's how good he was. In 1 minute, he had captured the people like he never left office.
Of course.
I mean, he moved right back into that leadership position.
It's Obama.
In 1 minute. But that's an amazing thing to be able to do.
And Obama is an interesting president because consultants will tell you over and over again, it's not the job of a politician to educate.
Right.
I used to try to do that in my campaign.
But you can't.
And politicians would say, no, don't try to educate. Obama does.
Right.
Obama's not afraid of being, they used to criticize him for being professorial. That's what I loved about him. He taught me. When I watched him, I learned.
Yeah, if
and
you didn't know,
today
you know.
I learned about my country and I learned about history. And I may have already known it, but everyone else was learning things that they did not know. And it was such an extraordinary
Is that the beginning of the
speech.
midterm season national?
Oh, he started it.
Was that it right there?
He started it, and he nationalized the race.
Yeah.
Usually Democrats don't nationalize midterms. They usually say everyone runs locally, and
right.
you know
Take care of
they're
your own.
afraid of being liberal or
Your
afraid
backyard.
of whatever. And this time he basically said, I don't care where you are, where you live. You know, the subtext was, get out there. If you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're an independent, it really doesn't matter. We got to put a check on this guy. And there's only one way we're going to do it, because he made very clear that
Well,
the Republican majority was not going to do it.
I've always thought Obama's brilliance is that while looking and being very charismatic and likable, he can move the chess pieces oh so subtly.
That's right.
Like his statement today when he started talking about, well, when they talk about jobs in the economy, let's remember where that began in my administration.
Mm-hmm.
So it now moves the argument, and it gives Democrats an argument to make that.
Sure it does.
Yeah, we're in this great recovery. But as we've talked about before and we know, but it didn't start here, it started there.
Of course.
And so, and there's data to back that up. So it shifts the argument just a little when we
Yeah.
talk about
Of course,
this
Trump came out
prosperity.
with all these papers and was reading
dude's
all
not
these
reading anything.
statistics, which
Let's-
I'd love to fact check at some point.
Let's take this to Facebook.
Okay, we got about a minute though, I think.
But yeah,
So,
it looks like we got a little bit of time.
Yeah, we got a little bit of time.
But
so.
that hour in that speech, it seemed like it was 15 minutes. It did
did.
not take that
did.
long.
Yeah, no, it was extraordinary, and of
At
course
all.
then, you know, Trump's brilliant answer was, you know, well, I slept through it.
All right, well, let's
All
run
right,
over to the
going
other
to
studio.
Facebook.
All right.
This is NewsRap live at 5. Our clock was off.